All right. So, how you guys doing? Did you get your, who got at least 1,000 words written last week? That should be all of you. Okay. Did anyone get the 2,000 to 3,000 that I suggested? Okay, most of you. Good. Some of you didn't. That's okay. I hope you're auditors. I'm pretty serious about this. Doing it hard your first few weeks is going to be very good for you. Getting a lot done, getting momentum going, because you're going to hit all these things like midterms and all of that stuff, and your roommate's going to get engaged, and all this crazy stuff is going to happen, or you're going to get engaged. That happens too sometimes. Hopefully only once per person, but it happens. Life catches up with you, and so keep up on your writing, get ahead if you can. You can theoretically do the bulk of the work for this class in your first month if you want to, and then just basically be done. All then you have to do is read people's writing as they submit them to writing group and polish off 2,000 word chunk at the end of the semester. You could be basically done with this class in a few weeks if you really wanted to be. All right? That doesn't happen very often in classes, so take advantage of it. Find yourself a seat on the floor or wherever, it's fine. There's a chair over there. You're welcome to have that one. So, yes, get ahead. Does anybody have any questions about the class or the coursework or anything like that? Nope. We all have it down. That's good. All right. Let's talk about writing stories. As I said last week, kind of view a story as... I was talking about this big, tall one. Yes. Okay. Plot, setting, and character. And conflict is the glue that binds this all together. That's what your story is going to be about, these things. For a really great story, you are looking for places where you can create conflict between these things. Either between characters, or between the character and the setting, or between, the character and the plot. These are things that just keep an eye out for, all right? We're going to talk a little bit about world building today. The trick about talking about world building is, I honestly feel this is the most important thing to telling most stories. There is a subset in which this is the most important thing. This is never the most important thing. All right? Almost never. Maybe some conceptual stories. And yet, this is the thing that defines science fiction and fantasy as a genre. Right? This is our thing. This is what we do. The issue with this is, we're reading science fiction and fantasy because we like the setting, but we're finishing books because we like the characters and the plot. And this kind of sort of conflict, if you will, between this idea is that new writers, what they tend to do is they tend to spend a lot of time on this to the detriment of this and this, to the point that your stories are boring. Number one problem with new writers of science fiction and fantasy is that they overload on this, and then they have a dull story. All right? This is because, again, we read the genre because of this. Really good setting is important, and ideally, in a great book, you're going to do all three of these things equally well. All right? I don't want to downplay setting. Setting is awesome. Setting is all the things that make us read. The science fiction elements, the spaceships, the space battles, the magic, all of these wonderful things, that drew us to this genre in the first place. But you've got to be careful. And we're going to talk about learning to be very careful and how we address our setting and how we get it across to people today. Because as I've said before, the grand skill for a science fiction or fantasy writer is the ability to do this in an unobtrusive way. Awesome setting, unobtrusively. If you can learn to do that, your story will be way more awesome than if you don't do that. And if you don't do that, it's very obvious quite early on. Hi. So, We'll let him get situated. Sorry, you got kicked out. Are you in the class for real, or are you an auditor? You're for real. Okay, auditor, give up your seat for this person. Come on. Particularly if you're an auditor who isn't actually registered as an auditor in the class and just kind of sitting in here. Thank you. You can go find a chair and bring it in. I know there are some of you that aren't actually even officially in the class. We prefer that you audit, but I don't want to take roll every week, so I'm not going to find out. But if you are one of those people, I would appreciate if you find yourself a seat and bring it in, so that each week, so that there are seats for the people who are taking the class and things like that. We may eventually want to have people sit by their writing groups so that table is assigned to them and they know where they can sit and things like that. So my classes tend to get pretty crazy. This will not be a problem starting next year. That doesn't really help for you. Starting next year, we're going to get an auditorium and things and whatnot. But, okay, so that's sort of a conflict, right? I mean, you read this because of this stuff. Yet you've got to have great characters and plot. The times where plot is going to overshadow, there are some stories that we would call plot stories. The whodunit is often, the plot can be a little bit more important. It really depends. The balance between these two is going to depend on your story, the type of story. A lot of epic fantasy tends to be more focused here. A lot of idea stories and science fiction tend to be more focused here, but it doesn't really matter. I mean, if you go read Asimov, you'll see stories where plot kind of takes the forefront. But if you read most of the fantasy from the 80s and 90s, you'll see the character-driven stories there. Anyway.